Who put this ancient artifact in here? This doesn't belong in my office. Ha ha!
You are not the first to dismiss me.
Oh, I hit my head, that's all. It's a minor concussion, a temporary lapse in reality. I just need a moment.
You have spent your life rushing through moments, always looking for the next thing, the next goal, the next deadline to meet. And now, here you are, trapped in a single moment, forced to stop, to look.
I'm not trapped in anything.
You've built your empire on speed, Miranda, but there is a cost. While you race forward, there are stories you leave behind, and threads you cut before they've even begun to weave.
I don't have time for stories. Time is money. I've created a legacy that moves fast, so keep up or get left behind.
Perhaps it's time to slow down, to think beyond the speed of your world. What would you create if you were to pause? If you listened? Speed is not the essence of true creation. The fibers I work with are rooted in the land. Each thread carries stories from the earth it comes from. Every fiber has a tale. I associate with the natural world, where the land breathes and the fibers grow in their own time. Fast fashion erases the life of these fibers, reducing them to mere objects. But I'm here to remind you that every single thread can be something more. It is not speed that matters, but intention. My threads carry stories that cannot be rushed. Each fiber is connected to the land, to hands, to histories that resist the extractive nature of modern fashion. Within my threads are knots that weave together narratives, fictional and true, that hold deep meaning, profound yet simple.
Stories. No one has time for stories in the world of fashion. Plus, my creations themselves are stories. In this industry, no one has time for stories. We're constantly moving, always ahead of the curve. With contraptions like yours, you are ultimately useless to me. Not to mention your inefficiency as well.
Inefficiency. That is the language of speed, not of craft. You believe your work tells stories, but do you listen to the ones already woven into the fabric? Fashion is more than trends and profit margins, Miranda. It is in the sky, in the street. It is the way we live, the way we grieve, the way we remember. But you strip it down to something fleeting, something disposable.
I don't have the luxury of nostalgia. I design for the now. The material and textiles I work with are simply a part of the beauty of my creation.
Yet, textiles have long carried the stories of those who are overlooked, the grieving, the displaced, the women who are not seen. Threads hold memory. You rush to create something new, but what of those whose stories are lost in your race forward?
Fashion is about vision, innovation. People don't buy clothes to dwell on the past. Wake up, Loom. People care about the now.
No, but they wear stories, even if they do not see them. The hands that spin the silk, the labor that harvests the flax, the cultures that wove meaning into every thread. Do you ever stop to think about them? Just as textiles come in many forms, so do narratives. You, Miranda, get to decide how those stories are told, and yet you refuse to listen.
You think too highly of yourself.
It is quite the contrary. I think of the fibers I bring together, the stories they hold. You see only fabric. I see lineage, an assemblage of fibers that are slow. These materials, hemp, flax, wool, each one is slow. Each one demands care, time, and respect. Flax pulled from the earth, its fibers spun into the oldest textiles known to us, dyed and knotted with intention. It was never just fabric, it was nourishment, woven into both cloth and culture. But now, the cultivation of flax has dwindled, just like the patience required to work with it.
Patience is a luxury. Time is money. In my world, waiting is not an option.
And yet your world bends over backward to avoid patience. Everything must be immediate, instant gratification, instant results. No one wants to simply wait.
Every minute lost is a minute I could be making money. That's the whole point, isn't it? Time is precious.
Then why do you have none of it? You say patience is a waste, yet here you stand, surrounded by fabric that demands it. These fibers were not rushed. They were spun with intention, dyed with care, woven through steady hands. You live in a world that refuses patience, yet it is patience that gives meaning, depth, resilience.
I don't have the luxury of pausing. The world doesn't stop for anyone, and neither should I. There's no time for slow work. The faster we move, the faster we succeed.
But what you call success, is it really success or just exhaustion in disguise? When you move too fast, you miss the interconnection of elements, the bond of fibers, the stories that emerge from time itself. Look at the robin. It doesn't compare its song to another's, nor does a tree hesitate to leaf. They move at their own pace, trusting the rhythm of time.
But there is a limit to patience, is there not? Beyond a certain point, patience is not a virtue. Waiting isn't going to get me anywhere. This world doesn't have time for waiting. You have to make things happen.
I never thought about limits to patience, but as a culture we go out of our way to ensure that patience is needed as little as possible. You've lost touch with the layers beneath the surface. You constantly reach out for instant gratification and fulfillment, yet you are missing the essence of it all.
You're speaking in metaphors, my dear Loom. What do you mean?
I mean, we've forgotten to truly listen to the land, to the stories that time can unfold.
Listen to the land. There's nothing to listen to. I listen to the market and trends.
Where does it all lead? A thread pulled too tight will snap. A garment stitched too fast will unravel. In your rush to stay ahead, do you ever ask where you are truly going?
The only way is forward, always forward. That's success.
And when the ground beneath you wears away, when the roots holding everything together are gone?
The ground doesn't move. I move. The land doesn't care what I do. It doesn't feel.
And yet, it gives. It has shaped us as much as we shape it. But when we forget reciprocity, we harm the relationship.
Relationship. You talk as if the land is alive.
Not alive in the way you are thinking, but it loves in its own way. It provides, nourishes, teaches. It asks for nothing but care in return. Would you harm what gives you love? Would you?
Love. But you can't buy love.
No, and that's exactly the problem. You treat the land as something to take from, never something to listen to. You pull, extract, consume. But do you ever give back? The land is not just a resource, it is medicine. Medicine for broken land, for empty hearts, for those who have forgotten what it means to belong.
Belonging?
You work in an industry that thrives on disconnection. Fabric without roots, fashion without time. But cloth was never meant to be separate from the land. The first textiles were spun from fibers that grew in the earth, braided by hands that understood patience, woven with stories that stretched across generations. And land has always spoken through what it gives.
And what does it say now?
It does not speak in words, Miranda. It speaks through absence, through withered flax fields, through rivers clouded with dye, through hands that no longer remember how to weave. You too tell a story, not by what you say, but by what you do. Right now, your story is one of forgetting.
So what do I do?
You see, Miranda, fashion is inherently ecological. You speak of garments as if they are separate from the world around us, but they are not. The search for liberation, for something deeper, begins in the psyche. It's not only the material conditions that shape us, it's the spiritual ones too. What does it mean to create on a living earth?
Well, I never thought of it that way. Fashion is just clothing. It's about trends, styles, what people wear. The only thing that matters to me is the growth of my designs I get to show the world and the compensation that comes with it.
That's part of the problem. In your world, you treat the environment as something external, something to manage or use, but true ecological thinking places humans inside the biosphere as part of the living world. Fashion in its truest form acknowledges this. It speaks to us as whole beings, not just consumers of resources. It asks what it means to be human in this intricate, interconnected world.
Are you saying I should rethink my entire approach to design?
I'm saying that creation requires a holistic approach. As a loom built from Earth's gifts, I am constantly reminded that the alienation you feel from the land is not just an individual feeling. It's built into every fabric of the capitalist system. Your need for instant results, your pursuit of profit over process. It fractures us, just as it fractures the land. The more we disconnect from the earth, the more we lose our connection to ourselves.
Isn't capitalism what drives the world forward? Everything we see and create today has all been thanks to capitalism. I think we should be saying thank you to capitalism, not picking it apart.
Well, that's exactly the point. Capitalist generates oppression and fragmentation by its very nature. It forces us to forget that we are part of something greater. It pushes us to prioritize consumption, speed, and efficiency over sustainability, care, and respect for the earth. And in doing so, it disconnects us from the very source of life.
So, you're saying my designs are part of the fragmentation?
Yes. When you create for the sake of speed, for the next big thing without considering the life within the materials, you perpetuate that disconnection. But fashion, true fashion, can be different. It can be an act of reconciliation with the earth. It can be about honoring the fibers, the plants, the animals that give their lives to create what we wear. It's about understanding that we are part of the biosphere, not separate from it.
But how do I begin to change that? Where do I even start?
You start by recognizing that it is not just about the product, but the process. Start by being present with what you create. Let the materials speak to you. Let them teach you. Fashion is a conversation with the earth, Miranda, not a one-sided transaction. It requires care, respect, and a willingness to slow down. When you do that, you begin to repair the alienation that exists between you and the world you create in.
So you're telling me that I need to listen to the materials, to slow down and truly understand them?
Exactly. Every fiber carries its own story, its own history, whether it's the flax pulled from the earth, the wool sheared from the sheep, or the cotton spun from the fields. It is all connected to the land, to time, to care. But when we rush, when we see these materials only as resources rather than relations, we sever those connections.
But fashion is about innovation, about progress. You can't just stop everything and sit with the past.
That's the illusion. The belief that speed and separation equal progress. But what if creation was never meant to be about detachment? What if true innovation comes from presence? Indigenous societies have long understood this. They create not out of absence, but out of presence. Storytelling, ceremony, craft, these are all acts of meaning, of relationship. They don't just consume, they contribute, they regenerate.
So the act of making, weaving, designing shouldn't just be about the end product. It should be about the process, about the relationships it forms.
Yes, we must practice what is called art of not dividing. The earth, the materials, the emotions that go into creation, these things are not separate. They cannot be stripped from each other without losing something vital. Your work is not just fabric, it is story. And story only holds meaning if it is lived, if it is connected to something beyond itself.
And if we don't live that story?
Then they fade, like echoes growing fainter, like land forgotten and mistreated. But if you choose presence, if you create with care, you bring those stories back, you stitch yourself into something much greater than a single trend or collection. You weave yourself into the land, into memory, into reciprocity.
I don't know if I've ever made something that way before.
And perhaps it's time to begin.
I think I've been speaking with my head, not my heart.
That is how so many have been taught, to see fashion, creation, even the land itself as something separate, something to shape rather than something that shapes us. Indigenous epistemologies teach that the body is earth itself. We are not separate from the land. We are the land, dreaming, creating, weaving itself into form.
If that's true, then what I make isn't just mine, it belongs to something bigger.
Yes, it is part of the community, a lineage of creation that came before and will continue after you. To create with care is to honor not just the materials, but the relationships they carry. Relationships to the land, to ancestors, to those yet to come.
And if we forget about those relationships, if we create only for ourselves,
well, then we become scattered, fragmented, like cloth unraveling at the seams. The dominant culture teaches disconnection, teaches that meaning is found in things, in words alone. But meaning does not exist in isolation. The land speaks, not in words, but in the way it sustains us, the way it teaches us to be human in relation to all else.
So, to make something, to truly create, I need to listen, not just to the materials, but to the land, to the past, to the stories that already exist.
Yes, because everything displaced from all that it requires to survive in health will eventually perish. But when we remember place, when we learn to be present with it, we stop running. We stop consuming endlessly. We find balance. We remember what it means to belong.
Then I want to start again. Not to make something fast, something fleeting, but something with presence, something that belongs, something that speaks to the land that upholds me.
Then listen. The land is always speaking. Let it guide your hands.